So getting into volume 11 of Jobless Reincarnation, what I really, really love about this volume is some of the fun interactions between Norm and Aisha. The back and forth between them as kids, and also the family dilemma, and you kind of just see, again, how each of them are treated different depending on the situation. And I do kind of feel sorry for Aisha, because she kind of gets treated poorly because she's seen as the illegitimate child because of the whole, again, cheating situation that happened in the early stages of the story. And so she kind of gets a bit of the backhand treatment, but at the same time, she is really, 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 really smart and a little bit overconfident in her intelligence. Got a bit of an ego. But then you've also got Norm, and Norm has an inferiority complex because she keeps being measured up to Aisha, and yeah, things just... There's a bit of a battlefield between them because of their relationship between who the mother is between the two. But it is nice to kind of see them somewhat get along for the most part, and especially Norm having to overcome some of her issues when it comes to Rudy. And I mean, again, like I said, she gets compared to, of course, the sister. But then after she goes to this other school, she thinks, oh, finally I won't be compared to, her, but then starts getting compared to Rudy, which just kind of ends up leading to her breaking down, and Rudy trying to confront her and trying to bridge that gap between them, and her realizing that Rudy wasn't at fault for what happened back in those previous volumes, and even Paul admitted to it. And yeah, again, it's understandable. I understand where Paul came from, but at the same time, Paul also, I think, underplayed some of what Rudy went through, and Paul probably should have realized how dangerous that place was, being an adventurer himself. But I think him being in the gutters about everything that happened, I think he needed someone to lash out to feel better about himself, so he used Rudy as that scapegoat, but realizing after being educated by Geese that as much as Rudy did, glamour up that adventure, it wasn't as sunshine and rainbows and daffodils as Rudy played it out to be, which again, that is a little bit of Rudy's fault. So all of that cascading to Norm being angry about the fights and her kind of holding on to that grudge, and it's understandable. Again, she's young, she's immature, she loves her dad. Her dad's been there through thick and thin. They've been there through all of this. And Rudy just randomly pops up, and she probably doesn't really have many memories of Rudy, except maybe, when they were little babies, which would lead to her not knowing very much about Rudy other than secondhand information from other people. And then again, being compared to her other sister and then Rudy has definitely led to her feeling very, very, very inadequate, which has led a little bit of a sour taste in her mouth when looking at Rudy. It also doesn't help that two particular Beast Girls went around stealing underwear and led Rudy getting a bit of a weird reputation. That was hilarious, but also weird at the same time. At least Rudy did the right thing. But again, Rudy is married now, so, he's got to be a good boy. He's not got to, stray away from his loving, dearing wife that he's definitely having a lot of action with, try and piece things together. And Rudy's trying the best he can to try and make things work. And he's not perfect. He's definitely, struggling with things. And then, of course, Rigid also pops up, and him and that are having, their discussions and learning about Eris. It all throws, a lot of things into chaos, which then adds on to this with volume 11. So there's definitely a lot of crazy things going on. But again, one particular maid little sister, being as intelligent as she is, probably doesn't help as well, and she's a little bit of a smarty pants. And her drive to really want to be a maid, and how she can be a little bit dirty is the way to put it. She's got a dirty mind. That girl needs some discipline. She needs to be sat down and said, no, you cannot act in this way. This is weird. I think she does it also just to tease Rudy, because Rudy is, again, a little bit weird himself, so she kind of does it just to tease at him, even though Rudy is, again, maturing and growing and kind of overcoming some of the weirder behaviors, and very much focused on wanting to be there for his loving wife, and also trying to get her pregnant. And now that she is pregnant, he's trying to be that role model father that he's going to end up being, so he's trying to do the right thing. So props to that. You've also got a lot of other stuff going on as well with the letter, and again, there's also the other stuff with the summoning circles and the breakdown and all the research that was going into that stuff, and all the other people doing the research, especially in the underwear for, of course, our particular thirsty little elf herself. There's a lot of other stuff going on, but then the real big heavy hitter is the letter. And of course, the man god's advice, he finally appears again, giving very limited amount of advice with no context to it other than just do this or you'll regret it. It's definitely very interesting when he said, yeah, you should shack up with one of the beast girls and basically add it to the harem. I was like, whoa. Whoa. And I mean, to be honest, I do think the beast girls do kind of like Rudy a little bit, and I think they'd be open to it, but at the same time, Rudy wants to be loyal to, of course, his loving wife, which is going to be interesting later on if other stuff happens. Like, again, the man god basically saying, no, you shouldn't go this direction, you shouldn't go following the letter to go save your mother. And of course, you know, Paul and Geese and Roxy will be there, so maybe there's something sinister going on there where the man god doesn't want something to play out, so he's trying to force Rudy to go down another route. But of course, Rudy ends up ignoring that. And I mean, again, that's actually, I think it's the first time Rudy actually really ignores the man god's advice and basically says, no, I'm doing this. Which originally Rudy wasn't going to go because he wanted to be there for the pregnancy and his wife and all that, but ends up deciding to go because, of course, his sister was actually going to go in his place, and he's basically like, all right, fine, I'll go, you take care of things. And he also finds a way to actually shorten the trip, so instead of it being 2 years of a trip, it's going to be much shorter, thanks to a particular girl from another world that, again, as I was mentioning about the research with the teleportation stuff, she basically says, okay, this is a way that you can do this a bit faster. So it's really interesting how all these events play out with the teleportation circles, shortening the trip, then them going on the trip, and of course our feisty little girl herself, the elf, ends up also going along, which again, technically, grandmother herself, goes along, and they basically have this adventure. And the last component to the actual light novel is their adventure, them going through the travels and them overcoming different challenges like the succubus stuff, and Rudy, yeah, being succumbed to a succubus and acting out in a poor manner, but again, he was being controlled by the hormones that were coming from the succubus itself. There is also an extra chapter that goes over Norm and the Miller's Church. I'm going to save that for a separate video because, again, there's so much more to discuss about her and her mindset and her overcoming stuff. She's an interesting character, and I feel like she's going to get a lot of hate in the anime because of how she acted. Again, where people are going to ignore the fact that she is a child at that point where she first gets introduced, and then at this point in the story, she's a little bit older, but she's not that old. Again, kids do act up, they're immature, they're irrational at times, and I feel like she's going to get a lot of unnecessary hate. It's understandable why she's angry at Rudy, but I think, again, you're going to understand she is a child, she's irrational, she's only seeing things from her point of view until she sees the bigger picture and realizes, oh, I was in the wrong. And the great thing is Rudy doesn't hold a grudge, he's understanding. And that's the thing, Rudy understands her point of view and why she's angry, which is why he's not holding a grudge and he's not holding it over her and disciplining her. He's trying to bridge that and just basically be like, let's just, come together, ignore the past, let's move forward. And that's what I really like about Rudy. He's actually matured quite a lot. And I think that's really the main component of this volume is the relationship between Norm and Rudy, but then also the turning point with the letter, and then basically Rudy deciding to ignore the man gods. Truly what would have played out if he actually took the man god's advice, other than, shacking up with one of the beast girls during mating season. Sure, he would have shacked up with her, but clearly there would have been other stuff that would have happened. So again, I'm really looking forward to volume 11, seeing how that plays out. There's also other stuff, with the journey Riv, of course, them going through the desert and all these other places. But that to me is all very minor. It just adds kind of flavor to the world itself and world building. It's not really something worth dissecting, but it's still pretty cool stuff nonetheless. And I really did enjoy reading it. It really adds many layers to the different types of monsters and the ecosystem, especially where the monsters were eating the other monsters, and then another pack of monsters come along and attack them, and then another pack of monsters, and it's just that kind of dog-eat-dog world. The bigger monster chases the smaller ones, and they all have herds, and they come together, and they gang up on other smaller creatures, or etc, etc. And the one last thing to note, and this is something that kind of, especially with doing the 2 videos on, of course, our lovely thirsty elf herself, the grandmother, they talk about Paul's relationship. Rudy asks her about it, and she's very much hesitant. She doesn't really want to talk about it, but she basically says, you know, do you really want to know about Paul's romantic history and why they are at odds ends? And to me, as much as that's very short and sweet, it basically says it had something to do with them being romantically involved, and I feel like Paul probably ditched her for Zenith, and she didn't like that. She felt probably betrayed and abandoned, and so she is probably a little bit sour at them about her feeling abandoned, because as I mentioned in the 2 videos, or particularly the second part, was that it was like a family to them. That's the thing, like they were a family, odds and ends between them. They were all a little bit unique and weird between Paul, Ghislaine and her, and of course a lovely dwarf himself. They were all weird and unique in their own right, and so it kind of felt like a big family being together, and so there was probably some attachment between her and Paul was probably just doing it because, you know, being Paul himself, bit of a sleazebag, but then when Zenith came along, he probably actually fell for Zenith and probably was just doing it as benefits for him with the other 2, which makes him, again, pretty scummy how he kind of just disposed of her. But again, I feel like there's a lot more to that story that we'll never actually truly know about, because again, ever find out both sides of the story. Particularly, I'd like to know her side of the story, because I feel like that would probably give more context to everything, but I feel like there was a lot more with her than meets the eye. But again, some interesting stuff. I'm definitely going to be talking about, again, Norm in a separate video. Love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below, but if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe for more anime content, and I will see you, beautiful nerds, in the next video.